You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? Well, then who the hell else are you talking to? Talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here. Who the fuck do you think you're talking to? Oh, yeah? Huh? Okay.
Now, what a moment. We see the taxi driver empowered by the feeling of a gun in his hand and inspired by the idea to show a prostitute a better life, practicing in front of the mirror how it would be if he would only have power. But this is just what happens, and it's not really important because it would resonate with no one. But what resonated with everyone is the underlying poetic why. So he is not a killer, he's a killer in the making. This is why he's unstable, and he uses the mirror actually not to meet anyone. He meets himself. And then he asks, who am I? And more importantly, who am I with this gun in my hand? The same question that Narcissus was not able to answer. So Narcissus' story is kind of lame. So he broke too many hearts, then he was cursed by a god to only love himself, which he did in the first place, and then he drowned while trying to kiss himself in a pond of water. Well, that story makes no sense, but there is again a poetic why. When he was born, Tiresias said, "This boy might have a long life if he fails to recognize himself." And that is somehow poetic because it weaves together our ability to survive with our ability to recognize ourselves forever. And that is the reason why we share that story from generation to generation, whispering, don't look too close in the mirror or you drown in yourself. That is the poetic why. Now today, I believe we witness the most spectacular mirror of all times, and that is technology, and especially artificial intelligence. I do not believe in the duality of man and machines. I believe that it's artifacts that directly were given birth by us. They came from us, and we can use these artifacts today to look at them and investigate, well, who are we? And this is what's interesting to us at the studio Waltz Binaire. It's an interdisciplinary studio for new media where we investigate how we can weave poetic content into new technologies. Now, this is important in my opinion simply because over the course of the last 10 years we have witnessed a storm of information flooding us every day. But we have seen more but remembered less. We have experienced more but felt less. This is because we simply are not able to process the information, and that flattened the level of our experience. And this is a problem no matter what you're doing, because unsustainable communication leads to unsustainable business. If no one listens to what you want to do, then you have a problem if you're an artist, but also you will not get your startup anywhere because no one will remember what was your agenda. Now, for my origin, as said earlier, I'm originally a robot dancer and did this for quite a while. And I have no clue actually why I had to do this for 20 years. I traveled all over the world and performed the robot all over the world. But what's stuck with me forever is that whenever you do the robot, you're actually not studying machines. Because if you move like a robot, the only thing the whole time you think about is your heartbeat, and that probably shows that you are human. You think about your hands shaking and your eyes drying out, so you have to blink. While becoming a robot, the only thing that you have to worry about is being a human. Now, on the other hand, I'm a computer scientist, and my mother taught me to code in 1992 when I was 12. She thought it could help me to structure my thoughts. She was also a software architect. And maybe she wanted to get me out of hip-hop, but what I directly did was the same travesty. I thought, wouldn't it be fun if there's this dead box and we could build something that comes out of it that looks alive, like this Christmas tree right here. But of course, over the course of time, this has evolved. So everything that you see today is only designed and created through mathematics. Now, I did both as a child because I enjoyed it, but doing a piece, a theater piece in Hanoi, Vietnam, about 10 years ago, I kind of founded my philosophy. And it goes like this. Imagine we as humans, I believe, we become more and more mechanical and digital. And on the other hand, we have machines, and they become more and more organic, human-like. And if we push them on top of each other, like an artistic overlay, then we do not see those redundancy that we just created, the things that we simulated. What we see more clear are the things that stick out, the things that we were able to not replace, to not copy. Those are the things that make the hand unique from the other hand, and are the things that make the machine, and the humans, the humans. And this is interesting because I think it has always been just about this. We have built digital Pinocchios and little machines that become more and more human only to find out what at the end is left of us. Is it that is left of us? The current belief is that there are three things that make the human the human. First of all, he knows about himself. And because he knows about himself, he's able to create a decision from within. And sometimes this decision is surprising to us, and that is what we call the creative decision. Now let's slice those in pieces and see if they truly exist. Now, the self is the first thing that we try to discover and try to investigate from the perspective of artificial intelligence. And we stumbled into this field actually by an algorithm called image to text. Now, this algorithm is able to translate an image into a sentence. And when I saw this algorithm, I felt like this is completely insane. No one was really interested, but it's amazing. Just think of the ability that I see something, then I encode it into a language, I make sound waves, you receive them, decode them, and all of a sudden you see it too. This could be called telepathy, we call it communication, but it's a miracle so complex that we know nothing in the universe that is able to perform the same task. Now machines are able to do so, and I felt this is sensational, but as artists, our question is, now that the machine sees and understands what's in front of it, what could it look at, right? So we showed this algorithm art, for instance, photography, and asked, what do you see? And it sees a man riding a bike in this photography, and it makes sense. But as soon as it gets a little bit more abstract, we see that it kind of fails. It sees a motorcycle. But what do we know what's in this image? And this right here is my favorite. It's actually a Bauhaus performing artist. It's a stick, a ball, and a human. It must be a baseball player. Now, this was enough for a small joke, but I don't think enough for art, because it doesn't hit anyone. So we investigated a little deeper, trying the Rorschach test. We showed this machine this image, and if you also think like this machine, that this is a close-up of a bird on a tree, then the possibility that you're psychological sick is by 82%. Now, that was, again, enough for a little joke, but still it doesn't hurt anyone because it doesn't answer the corresponding question that is necessary. What do you always see the whole time, but you have absolutely no clue what it is? And I definitely have no clue how to put it in just one sentence. And I believe it is yourself. You continuously look at yourself and you have no clue what it is. You have big interest in yourself, but you can't explain it. Now we thought, let's build exactly this. That might have the poetic power that we're thinking of. So we created a naked body of a computer, a motherboard, and placed a little sensor on top of it so it has an eye to the world. And then it is able to investigate what it is looking at. But unfortunately, it's standing right in front of a mirror. So the only thing that this machine could ever analyze is actually its own existence. So by the use of a simple mirror, we basically ask the machine, who do you think you are? On the back of the screen, we see a little monitor, and on this monitor we can see where this machine is currently looking at and what it thinks it is, or who he thinks he is, because his name is Narciss. But why is consciousness so important? I do believe it has been the mother of all discoveries. About 50 to 100,000 years ago, we came up with the idea, oh, I exist. And after this epiphany, we thought, well, now that I know that I exist, I know that I don't like this. I have to design my environment, but I can't do it by myself, so I have to communicate with others. And I can communicate not everything that works in my neural network, so I have to sing and dance and paint on walls. And I do know that I exist, but I don't know why. So we created another existence that we can ask. Why do I exist? Everything came from this one moment. And that's why we thought, let's rebuild this moment with a machine. But what about choice? So basically, that you have a choice is the reason that hopefully someone pays you every month. Because if we would already know what you do next, no one would pay you. But it's also a principle of democracy, because the only reason why we ask you for your vote is because we don't know before what you're gonna vote. If we would know this, no one would ask you. Now, you see, it's fundamentally important, but it's not clear if we actually have a choice. For instance, pick a favorite material from those gloves. And imagine I would be able to determine the type of material that each of you picked. That would mean that you don't have a closed circle in which you generate a will. It would mean that you are actually open and readable, just like a machine, predictable. But I'm not able to perform this task. But this can have two reasons. The first reason is, well, you are a closed circle in which you generate with yourself your own opinion. Or, I'm stupid. I'm just a very bad observer. Maybe you lay open the whole time what you're going to do next. I just can't read the code. Now, let's take a look at our ability to predict what's going to happen next. So this right here is a sequence. And you have to predict what happens next. And if this goes on forever. Well, I can tell you it's the opposite side. Now, this is what happens next. Now, take a look at this sequence right here. It's a little bit more complicated, but I think you might already get it. So this is a circle, and it's your task to see what's going to happen next, after the end. Well, and if you think that this right here is the right one, then you're absolutely right. It goes around 12 and then finishes right next to it. But let's take a look at this one. Basically, the GIF is broken, so it doesn't really work. We take away the circle, and it's your task to see what would happen next. And I think you're not able to do those. But the thing here that I want to communicate is I wrote all three codes, and they are equally long. You are very good with left-right, and you are very good with a circle. But as soon as we distort the circle a little, you're completely unable to predict what happens next. So what if you, as humans, are just very distorted circles, but still machines? But let's take a look at this organism right here. Do you think there is some conscious jelly in those little microorganisms that makes a conscious decision every day, a choice that it won't act or go left, right, or just don't walk today? I do believe they're complete robots. It's just hidden to us. And what's about this, a little bit more complicated microorganism? Do you think it's predictable what he's gonna do next? And that's what our new art piece is about. We do believe it is completely predictable, especially if he tries to optimize himself. He will create redundancy and reduce the complexity of his behavior, and because of this, he will be swallowed by the machine. So first, he tries to keep up with the machine, and that's how we swallow him. And this is what our new project is about. It's called 5 seconds. And it's basically a mirror, and you see, in this case, yourself. You can wave your hand. But it's a digital mirror enhanced with a camera and a neural network. And it doesn't show you waving your hand. It shows you if you will wave your hand in 5 seconds. It basically continuously predicts what you're gonna do. Now, how is this possible? Everyone would say now, well, I could do the opposite. And that is the part where the art kicks in, because scientifically, yes, it's a little difficult. But the art comes with a judgment that we want to say. Because yes, you could always do something else. But I do believe that you will get used to a future in which you will continuously be predicted, and you need 2 weeks, and you will be okay with it. So no, we can't predict anything that you could do, but you will not do anything. You will do every day the same. Now, but what about creativity? And creativity is very important to us because we are actually a creative studio. We create new media content with evolving technologies in order to communicate stories. But therefore, we are of course interested how those evolving technologies will affect our business. So we thought, let's discuss the gun technology. It's a technology that is able to generate fake Obama speeches. It is able to create fashion that we never designed and come up with new solutions, and it's able to think of horror dogs. But to understand the power of those artificial horror dogs, you have to understand the underlying technology that we use in order to create those dogs. And it works like this with two different artificial intelligences. The first one is a teacher and the second is student. Now the teacher gets to see data, let's say faces, and he then asks the student, could you also create a face? This student then creates any image completely randomly, and the teacher says, well, you should try this again because it looks completely different. He tries a million times and then nearly comes in the right direction. And since the teacher then says, well, that looks better, the student knows and learns in which direction to go. And after a while, the teacher is not able anymore to distinguish between its original data and the one that the student created. He basically falls for fake images. And that's the moment when it gets really interesting, because you have to remember this part right here. We now take away the teacher and the data and ask the student, could you please think about humans? And this is what he came up with. Now, he continuously thinks about different humans, but none of them were ever alive. None of those pictures were ever taken. He doesn't go through data because you have to remember the student never had the data. He never saw the data. It was the teacher that is gone now. What you see here is a system that does know everyone, for instance me, and it knows you and all your ancestors and your children that you never gave birth to. Why? Because it didn't store data of images, it learned what makes a human. Now, this is of course very interesting, but why is no one doing 3D? It's because they can't. Because 1 dimension more is 1 dimension more complex. Actually, it's 1,000 times more complex because the z-axis has 1,000 times the data of just a 2-dimensional image. Now, till we found actually a little trick. We found this 2 months ago, how we could compress 3-dimensional data into this network and ask him for new shapes. But we did so actually investigating the human body. We showed this artificial intelligence different shapes of the human body and wanted to ask him, could you also show us a new human body? And he then said, well, it looks like this. And that didn't really felt good or encouraging. But please look closely how it looks when the student thinks about 3D bodies. It looks suspicious, doesn't it? That was the first day. And I would like to show you the second day. So what do you think? Remember those faces morphing. How would it look? How would we call it if one body shape is continuously transforming into another shape? Well, we call it dance. And it's performed by a student that never saw a body. Now that this AI thing understands shapes and space, what could we show it to it? So we thought maybe let's take worthy objects that are really precious to us. For instance, our cultural heritage. Could this machine store all the things that we built, the artifacts? Now remember, it doesn't store the artifacts. It stores the information of the nature what humans have created. This is an early iteration, probably 2 weeks old, and it slowly starts to understand more and more of actually everything we did between Rome, Greek, Syria, and stores this. And all of a sudden, we have this artificial intelligence crawling off the motherboard and into our world. And it's now there in space, but I do know as an artist that contemporary dance and cultural heritage is not everyone's language. It's a weird language that not everyone is willing to speak. So we thought, could be there a be an object that is worthy or has been worthy across the last 100 years, and we could redesign it 30 times a second. And we call it die Gestaltungsmaschine. Over the course of the last year, we have completely transformed all our pipelines into artificial intelligence, and everything went quite flawless. We built sneakers, we will build new prototypes of cars, and endless material of 2D images. I'm not sure if that is what makes the machine now creative, but I'm also not sure if creative is a future business at all. And then all of a sudden there is nothing left. Who cares that we are able to think about ourselves if the choices that we make are predictable and doesn't seem to be creative at all? Now this is the lowest part of depression, because I believe we found by accident a solution for this. Now we thought, couldn't it be that we teach a machine not necessarily how adults create stuff, but how children create imagery? That would mean that we could have an AI access to completely forgotten creativity. We would see totally surreal images built by, well, the understanding of only how kids view the world. So we scraped as many images from the internet of children paintings and then taught this to the machine. And once we had trained our machine, we showed it this architecture here and asked it, could you please redraw it in a children's style? And this is how it looks. Now, an artificial intelligence is only implemented for one reason: to make a decision. Now, what's the color decision this AI came up with? Every decision. It just refuses to make a decision. And how about this landscape? It completely breaks. Or this cup of tea or coffee. It just doesn't work. And this is fundamentally interesting because it says something about us. We might be not able to outperform humans. We outperform certain tendencies of specific humans. Well, how is it possible that we are able to draw Picasso style 60 times a second? Right? But not this artist. Well, let's take a look at his data. What is it actually? How do they space their paintings? Well, in every way. What is their favorite color? Every color. And what is their motive? Everything. Well, an AI detects patterns if there are patterns. And that's why it fails with this. And what does that mean about the future mirror? Well, Charlie Chaplin already knew this nearly 100 years ago. We have to enrich our behavior, and then the machine will break. We ask the machine, what is this person going to do next? And it will say, well, everything. Now, and what about this machine that now is able to speak about itself? I would say, who cares? We didn't build a machine for 2 years with a webcam and a motherboard to place it into a crematorium, the biggest in the world, and then call Balanescu Quartet to play the violin just to find out how the machine feels. That would be too pathetic. Yes, it is a machine looking in the mirror, but this mirror is made for you. But whenever we look into the mirror, it's quite often that we just don't like what we see. Well, I do believe that today we see that this artificial intelligence and this robot that we are so frightened by is actually us. But we could use this technology to understand this and improve. And that is why I'm not scared of machines becoming more and more organic. I'm deeply worried about humans becoming more and more mechanic. Thank you very much.
We